Today on Locked On Red Wings, Detroit is reportedly in on the goalie market. Huh?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. And today is an episode I didn't think we would have to do, Scotty. Goaltending market, and we'll talk about it, is a little sparse. Red Wings have a couple goalies already locked up and plenty in the system. So it's like, we don't got to talk goalies. It's kind of a moot point. But then Jeff Merrick on his podcast, The Sheet, right, a daily face-off, I think, podcast, reported that the Red Wings are one of the teams that is interested in the goalie market. And so my first question about that, Scotty, just to lead everything off, is what?
I don't know, man. So there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot of moving parts in this discussion, I feel like. If this was a plan anyway, then why was... Because the reasoning that the Red Wings gave for Mrazek was he has multiple, he's not a rental. We can have Mrazek pass this year. And it's like, well, but he's not very good. So I don't really care. And they're like, oh, well, the plan right now, they said it at the end of season media availability that it, hinted at it looking like, at least in the spring, that it was going to be Mrazek and Talbot, golly. And so it's odd that you go out and trade for Mrazek and say that one of the things that appealed to you was the ability that, he has multiple, he's not a rental and you have him in 2025, 2026 as well. And then now we're shopping. I don't inherently dislike the idea.
Right.
I can't stand our goalie room. I think it's terrible. I'm very pro upgrading in net. I just feel like this is too many, cooks in the kitchen type of situation more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said at the end there, inherently I'm like, okay, good. The goalie situation right now at the NHL level is not good, but you have two goalies underneath a contract for one more season. So to add another, and yes, you could theoretically carry three. You've done that several times, but it, to varying degrees of success, hasn't really worked out in the grand scheme of things. So ideally, you would have to move on from one of those two goalies in order to make room for another goalie. On top of that, if you thought you needed a new goalie, then why did you add Peter Mrazek to the room to begin with, who was analytically one of the three worst goaltenders in the league last year? Now, granted, again, he was on one of the worst teams in the NHL in the Chicago Blackhawks, but even in that goalie room, he lost not just the number one role, not just the number two role. Well, he lost the number one and the number two role to become the number three guy. They traded for Spencer Knight, and he was sitting behind Soderblom as the healthy scratch each night. It's, did I say Elmer Soderblom? Soderblom's brother. I don't know who I said there, but
I honestly, all I heard was Soderblom, and I just assumed you were right. So we're gonna go with it.
I can't remember what first name I said, but the point there being is this is a mess of your own making that was completely an unforced error. So great, you're in the goalie market, but the options this year, and that this is part of the reason why I don't defend the Mrazek acquisition, because he's not a good goaltender. At least he hasn't been recently, and he might bounce back, and that'll be great. I'd love to be wrong. But there is truth to the point when Yzerman says that the goalie market is bad. Not that great of goalies are getting paid a lot of money right now. And so there is truth to that statement. And if you look at the goalie market, you look at the options that are available, that truth, that statement holds water. But at the same time, that also then deepens the question as who are you looking at on the market? Because, Scotty, the options on the free agent market right now are not good.
Right. Well, and that's I think again that goes back to the we kind of had this conversation about the roster as a whole rather than just the goalie room, but like look, man, like we can't just continuously sign players that aren't that good to multi-year deals and expect anything to change. Like at some point, you're going to have to take a big swing, and I feel like the goalie room has kind of been the epitome of that over the last, well, really in the entire Yzerman tenure. So it's odd to me. Again, I would love a better goal. Like that's a very high priority for me, actually. But I think the reason why this is odd is because they already have two goalies that are veterans that are under contract for this upcoming year, and the goalie free agent market is pretty bad.
Right. I mean, the goaltender on the market right now to hit free agency right now, Scotty, that has the best save percentage is Jake Allen, who is 34 years old. He had a 908 save percentage last year, which I think is around the league average save percentage, if not a little bit better, with a pretty solid New Jersey Devils team. Obviously, a banged-up Devils team, right? They lost their best players to injury,
one, though, obviously,
but a talented one. And then following that, it's Anton Forsberg with the Senators at 901, and after that, you dip below 900. It's James Reimer. We've already done that. Been there, done that. It's Alex Lyon, and that's another point too, right? Like, two of the 15 UFA goalies, 12 UFA goalies that are on the market right now. Actually, I think it's 10 because Marc-Andre Fleury retired, and Chris Driedger today, as of recording this, signed in the KHL. So there's 10 UFA goalies right now on the open market. Two of them were already Red Wings. Three of them were already Red Wings with James Reimer, Alex Lyon, and Ville Husso. And we know what we have out of that. Like if you're looking at the free agent market, there are a couple guys I might take flyers on, like Ilya Samsonov, who's had a good season in the past, and you're bouncing on maybe a bounce back, or you're banking on maybe a bounce back year out of him. But talk to Vegas Golden Knights and Leafs fans. They've been waiting for that for a while, and it doesn't quite happen. So it's like, who are we looking at that point? If you really were going to explore the goaltending market, I would have rather have just had Alex Lyon back at half of Peter Mrazek's cost, and he was going to give you the same level of production.
Exactly. I would have much rather we just didn't get. I mean, I would have rather we didn't get Mrazek. Just period. We can just end the sentence there. But in this context, especially, it makes the Mrazek move even more puzzling because why was this a priority then? If you're just going to burn cap on I don't know, man. It really confuses me greatly.
Well, and I think that's where we can pivot and, think maybe they're not just strictly thinking of the UFA market. Like, is it possible they're looking at the trade market? And I haven't heard of any rumblings of any players being available via trade, any goaltenders being available via trade, but I got a couple names that I got in the back of my head, one of which, Scotty, we are what's the word I'm looking for? Well-known, been connected to in the past. That's not... I just changed the last second what I was going to say there.
We've been well known as connected to them in the past. And
there we go. You know what? That's good enough.
That people say, yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly the words that people say out of their mouths all the time. But yeah, a player that the Red Wings have been connected with in the past. So stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Lockdown Red Wings.
Got to talk to y'all today about our good friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. You all know by now, I am a huge fan. If you are looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, you can crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I absolutely love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking on my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, well, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Yeah, Scotty, I mean, that's the next stage of this conversation. My head went was like, okay, well, if they're in the goalie market, it's either RFA or trade. And
Right.
you're gonna hate this name. They brought it up on Winged Wheel too. But it's a name that has been brought up so many times over the last 3 years, and that is of the Anaheim Ducks, John Gibson. Now, Scotty, John Gibson had a pretty nice bounce back year with the Anaheim Ducks. He's got 2 years left on a $6.4 million deal. But with a Ducks team that was pretty poor in 29 games played, he had a save percentage of .912. That's really good on that poor of a team. Granted, in a backup role. But I mean, if you're looking at the trade market, the Red Wings have been connected with this goalie for a long time, so there's the reason to believe that they've had interest in him for a long time. And of course, on top of that, they already kind of have their goaltending situation figured out with Lucas Dostal, who's pretty much ran away with the starting job in Anaheim. So when you're Steve Yzerman, you're looking at the goalie market. Anaheim's already made a couple of trades, taking on full salaries of aging veterans. They have more cap space still. You could do a little bit of a goalie swap, add in a good, a second or third round pick in there, maybe a B-tier prospect to sweeten the deal to make it worth their while as they rebuild. There are a couple of boxes that are checked in a John Gibson, but he comes with his own subset of red flags too.
Well, I think that's maybe an understatement. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that has been rumored to be traded away from the Ducks for since what, pre-COVID? Like, I feel like this guy's been on the trade block for Anaheim for about as long as he's been in the NHL almost. And yeah, like obviously back in his heyday, he was a fantastic goaltender, and I think that most Ducks fans look back and probably think that it would have made far more sense to them to have moved him when he was playing at his peak and was, under contract for all those years. Now he is, as you mentioned, a fine year, a solid fine year, and it's not an egregious contract, especially again as the cap continues to increase and whatnot, as we always talk about. But this has not been without its fair share of downs that have come with the ups over the last couple of years. I mean, he has had some really rough stretches in there. There was a point in time when there was a rumor that he just wasn't going to play for the Ducks because of all the stuff that was going on and whatnot. It has not been a career that has been quiet over there for one reason or another. But again, at his best, was one of the premier goalies in the conference for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a goaltender who this year had a goal saved above expected of 11.79. So, it wasn't, and we, without me even saying this, he was not a goalie who benefited from the team in front of him.
Correct.
Like, he was a guy who was standing on his head this season and had a good bounce back year. He's 31 years old, so for a goaltender, he's in his prime. He's younger than both Cam Talbot and how old is Peter Mrazek? I feel like he's been in the league forever, but I know hasn't actually been that long. Actually, I'm going to check that right now. Oh my gosh. I accidentally opened up my screenshot. I'm a mess, dude.
I feel like
screenshotted myself.
You screenshotted yourself? Can we
Almost.
see that?
No, I didn't. I didn't end up doing it. I almost did. 33 years old, by the way. It's Peter Mrazek's age. So he's younger than both the goalies you have under contract, which is crazy to say because it feels like John Gibson's been in the league for 5 million years. But this is a guy that a lot of Ducks fans, like you said, kind of feel like they wasted his career because they were good for a couple years when he was there, and then the team just fell apart, and they held on to him. They held on to this goalie while they were rebuilding and failed to rebuild, hired a new GM, and now are trying to then rebuild again. And I think they're, albeit rushing it a little bit, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Sure. So I think he is a valid option. And I think, Scotty, the other one, too, that comes to mind is a Thatcher Demco with the Vancouver Canucks. And I think that one is more of a stretch than the John Gibson one. And that's because he's 29 years old. He signed for one more year at $5 million. They made a commitment to him, but they also made a commitment to Kevin Lankinen, who's just starting his first year on his new 5-year extension. But it feels to me, my senses, my gut is that they're trying more of a 1A, 1B. But Thatcher Demko's had incredible seasons in the past. He had a bad... It's kind of the opposite of John Gibson's situation, where it's like if you get John Gibson, you're gambling on that this bounce back year was an anomaly. For Thatcher Demco, you'd be banking on this down year not being or being the anomaly instead. So it's like they had kind of opposite end of the spectrum seasons, but Demko's, career, 918 save percentage the year before, 901, 915 the year before that, 915 the year before that. And he split the workload 2 of the last 3 years, but 1 year was 51 games played, and 2022 it was 64. Like he's been the guy who's carried the torch in the past. It's just with the addition of Lankin, and I'm not entirely sure what their perception on Thatcher Demco is.
Right.
So I think it's probably a 1A, 1B situation. I think they want to keep Thatcher Demco, but I'm just spitballing because I'm not sure who else would be available.
Well, yeah. Like again, that goes back to our original thing here. It's like who is even who? Like who? You're in the goalie market, great, dude. I'm in the becoming a billionaire market with doing no work. Like, how about that? Like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, everyone's in a market in which they could be looking to improve in net. It's outside of what, like 4 or 5 teams. So I don't know. It's just weird dynamic where I am glad that they are acknowledging that the goaltending situation isn't as good as it should be, but also frustrated because they're the ones that made it not as good as it should be. They did this to themselves. It's the how could they have done this meme. Like you did it. You got us here, bro. Like you're the one that made the trade. You're the one that like I don't know. I think it's also probably somewhat an indictment on a lack of faith that Kosa will be ready, at least in the first half of this season.
I had that thought too, right? Because like the goaltending depth, it's insane, right? We got like Gage Alexander, Guimond, Kosa, Augustine goes without saying there. Like
right.
there's and the new goalie they just signed, Michael, what's his name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. The Czech kid. Yeah. Like there's so many guys in this organization, and I think it does also, if this report is true, because again, here's another aspect. So there's a lot of false information intentionally flying around these days that teams are perpetuating. Like for instance, Andy Strickland, who's a very good insider, tweeted out today that the Ducks are looking to trade Troy Terry. And then 10 minutes later, he's like, psych, the organization reached out and said, this isn't true. Like, agents and teams are playing all kinds of mind games, putting smoke out there to try and create momentum, create things happening, that this report from Jeff Merrick could also be some kind of chess piece being moved. You can't, it's crazy. I love this time of year because rumors are just flying and it's fun to speculate. But it's also really hard to take, even from the best insiders. Elliot Friedman even said on his podcast, 32 Thoughts, after the last Stanley Cup Finals game that, he doesn't know what's true. Like, he reports what he's being told, but sometimes he'll get conflicting reports on the same player from 2 different sources. So, like, it's just, who knows if it's even true. But, yeah, I agree that at the base level, I think if they are shopping for a goalie and they bring another goalie in, yeah, I think that is a little bit of an indictment on where they think that Kosa's development stands.
Right. And maybe it's not as much. Maybe
indictment's a strong word.
Right. Maybe I shouldn't focus as much about like Kosa's development. I still have faith that Kosa is going to be good. I think the organization still has faith that Kosa is going to be good. It's just a timing thing, right? You don't want to go into the season unprepared, which again makes the fact that they are like, we are literally in this goaltending situation because of the moves the front office made even more puzzling.
Yes. So this just in, by the way, Scotty, this is like not really new. This isn't really news. It's more of a reminder. Darren Dreger has reported that the Red Wings would like to extend Patrick Kane, and they feel like they probably can get something done. So it's I'm just saying it because it's the first time we've heard about this contract.
Yeah, I think that's
since last June or last May.
Right. I think really the biggest thing there is the end. Like we've obviously known that the Red Wings have the Red Wings would have no issue bringing him back. I think it's just the fact that they are okay. Like it's news that they are actively trying to. That's a great sign.
Yes. So it'd be nice to bring him back because, even though one thing that's nice about Patrick Kane is as the speed decreases, he ages, the mind stays, man. The mind's in his mind and his
Right.
hands stay. That's why he's aging so gracefully in the point production category. So it'd be nice to have him back in the role that we had him. But anyway, Scotty, let's head to another break. When we return, we'll talk about the two Detroit Red Wings who are already going to be Olympians. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. I hit the wrong one.
I was going to say, that wasn't me.
I wonder how many people are going to notice.
Well,
It was
now
like half
everybody.
it's like half a frame. They're going to rewind and just
about
like
it,
one
so.
frame.
Right.
Unless I cut this. Find out tomorrow.
You do that, dude.
Find out on today's episode of Locked On Red Wings if I made this edit or not. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right. Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, both named to what I think is being referred to as the preliminary 6 of each nation's Olympic roster. And I thought that it was kind of a no-brainer for both of those players, right? Breakout young stars. I mean, especially for Germany, right? And I want to talk a little bit about Germany in a second because I love their development as a nation in the sport of hockey. But Raymond especially making the preliminary 6, I think is indictment the right word again here of how much he's developed
Sure.
in the NHL as a Swedish hockey player, because the Swedish hockey population has a strong presence. And so for him especially to be named as one of the first 6, I think goes a long way to say how well he is already respected.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't know, man, like both of them obviously deserve it, and it's really exciting. I think the cool thing with Seider specifically is that you kind of can almost view him, maybe not right now, but this is a guy that could be like, captain of the team for a decade, like at some point in his career. You know what I mean? Like he's so young that you could see him becoming like the figure of German hockey, I think, kind of going forward, and be something that maybe the next wave of German hockey players, a guy that they all look up to type of thing.
For the defenseman, maybe, but I think Leon Draisaitl's got a pretty strong grip on that.
Well, yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
Not anytime soon. That was my
Right.
point. But I think, down the road, that's a possibility because he's so young. Like I feel like that's something that he could achieve one day for sure.
And I just love like Germany. Now they're still a ways away from becoming, because the depth falls off pretty hard, pretty fast. But they've come to a point now where like I don't overlook them on the schedule when USA has to play Germany. I expect USA to win, but I don't expect them to go down easy because they have guys like Leon Draisaitl, they have guys like Tim Stutzler, they have guys like Moritz Seider now. Like they have young, really good talent. Like Leon Draisaitl's still in his 20s. Like he's a veteran for sure, but like they have at least another decade's worth of these 3 players playing together with, in addition to whomever might come up in the meantime. And that's going to just further foster more growth and more love for the game in the country of Germany by watching those guys. So I have a lot of love for how that's developing, because more good teams is good for the sport, especially for the viewing experience when it comes to that at the international level. Sweden's a powerhouse when it comes to hockey in the international sport. It's USA, Canada, Sweden, and probably Russia, right? When you think about the big powerhouses, Finland maybe a tier below that. So I think, again, for Raymond to be one of the preliminary 6, and that is also very worthy of respect.
For sure. Well, and that's, as you mentioned, I mean, that's a team that is, unlike Germany, like that's a team that is one of the prominent kind of fixtures there. And I think he's another one that has only turned more heads as he's played internationally, right? Like he kind of made the team, and he maybe, like during 4 Nations, I know he started off kind of down in the lineup and then produced and then like moved up, right? Like that, it just seems that every time he plays nationally, as the stage gets brighter, like he continues to perform and do well on that stage. And so I'm just really excited about where he could end up in, the all-time ranks for them as well. Like that's a guy that I really think could be, a fixture in the top 6 for one of the best hockey countries in the world for, most of his career.
So then let me pivot to ask you this, right? Because obviously Team USA's came out too. Were you at all upset at the exclusion of Dylan Larkin in the original, or the preliminary six, or DeBrincat or Kane for that matter?
I think the thing with Larkin was just that he has always wanted to participate and always has participated and obviously did well the last time he did. So, I don't know. I think that like Kane, you can always like if you just want like oh we want like a big name. That's obviously you can always kind of reach back and do that and slap a letter on his jersey, I guess. But I don't know. I think the Larkin one probably is a fair gripe, but I would say that's probably the only one.
Yeah, but see, the thing is with that is I'm really not all that upset about it. Like, it's one of those things where if one of our players gets announced as the preliminary six, I'm like, sweet, that's awesome. But if they're not, like Dylan Larkin, you can, if you want to be like, oh, he should be in there over Brady Tkachuk or Charlie McAvoy as the preliminary six, like, sure, whatever. Like, if that's what you want to the hill you want to die on, I'm confident Dylan Larkin's going to make the team.
Sure,
like,
sure. Right.
So I'm not up in I'm not up in a bunch about it. Like I know some people will be, but it's not that big a deal. It's exciting if they do, but it's also not a big deal if they don't. I think because I'm confident Larkin's making the team.
Right. I think both are fair. Like again, he was such a good player at Four Nations for them. Like one of the best, you could argue, one of the most productive in the tournament. So I think it's somewhat fair to maybe point that out, but I mean, to your point, at the same time, it's not like we're sweating him making the roster. He will be there.
Right. Well, and the same thing can be said about JJ Peterka with Team Germany, right? Like we were mentioning, the depth falls off out of there. JJ Peterka was a notable player who was left off that preliminary six for Germany, but there was a very good reason why he was left off. He currently does not have a contract, and so he does not have insurance, so he could not be named the preliminary six. So he would have been if he had a contract, without a doubt. I am sure of it. But he just, until he has a contract, he can't be. And they had to submit a list of 6 German players who had contracts and who had insurance. And Peterka does not have insurance because he does not have a contract. So I just want to point that out, too, because I know a lot of fans. I know it's been corrected since then. It's probably 2 days late for a lot of people. But I know a lot of people were questioning that. And it's like, no, there's a good reason for it. He'll be on he'll be on the team. Like, who are we, why are we so upset about it if our players aren't on the preliminary six? Again, it's cool if they are. Not that big a deal if they aren't, because the roster is going to have at least 23 players. I'm not sure how big Olympic rosters can be, but there's going to be a lot more players to be named. There's plenty of chances for them to make the roster.
I agree.
Scotty, do you have any final thoughts, dude?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. Be back with a new episode tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.